So to kick off with this build, it's all about getting the parts out for interior green. So that's pretty much what I'm looking at the minute. Detail, as I'm clipping these parts off, it's very good, surprisingly so. There's some nice sort of fine riveting on the fuselage sections that I've cut out, because they're obviously going to get interior green. And we can look here. I mean, the only thing that can be said, which is often the case with these Airfix kits, is the panel lines are a little bit heavy, but if that is the case, you can get around that one way by not actually trying to define them too much, so just being a bit gentler with the washes, which are, well, we'll get to at some point, so I'll be making a point of that. And we've got nice sort of detail on the bulkheads here, and there's the instrument panel with the throttle quadrant and rudder pedals all part of it, and then we've got oh sorry, no, there's the throttle quadrant there as part of the actual control levers, and the yokes on there as well. I'm getting into dangerous territory here with my terminology, but hopefully you can see what I'm talking about, and it's all very well detailed and impressive so far. And I've got a article to follow along with, and there doesn't seem to be any major fit issues in that build, so hopefully we'll be able to rattle on with this one. It's worth just pointing out here, I'm going to be doing an open Bombay, and I've cut these parts off because I want to spray them up, as I said earlier, and I've just written on the back there what the numbers are, so it's always quite useful, so you can keep an idea. Oftentimes there isn't a major difference, but you can guarantee the one time you don't do it, I mean, as you can see, it's pretty straightforward. It can't really go in any other way, but nonetheless, it's something doesn't hurt to do, and keeps everything on track. So that's a fair few of the parts for the interior cut off, and now I'm just going to be cleaning these up. This is pretty much everything that's going to be interior green. Now I have skipped forward, and there's obviously some gun turrets and some clear parts which are going to need the interior green. I'll come across towards the end once most of the airframe's together and attach the clear parts, mask them up, and then spray all of those as well with the interior green for a second pass. I'll get all of this cleaned up, and then we'll be into the spray booth. So just a point here on these parts for the Bombay, it's actually the Bombay doors that are the issue. You might be able to tell, I don't know, if you can hear that, there's a sort of rough texture, and I've sanded it off. You should be able to hear it's a lot smoother. You get this on Airfix kits for some reason, certainly the newer ones. It's not going to pick it up on camera, but believe me, there's a texture on these doors. I have had kits where it's all over the outside, but it's not on this, thankfully, so we're okay there. But I've just sanded that back with a 1000 grit, well, you can't see that, 1000 grit sanding stick, and that's done the job. I've also checked a few little ejector pin marks in here that were just stopping this going in the way it should. It should sort of slide up to the top, and obviously the bomb door here wants to be flush with the fuselage there. If not, it might just go like that. You can see there's a gap here, so you just got to push it that extra bit. But yeah, so that's going in now, so I'm gluing these all on. We've got ejector pin marks throughout the fuselage here, but I don't think you're going to see any of those because there's a fair bit of interior to go on in here like this, and it's going to block it out, so I'm not going to worry about them anyway. So I'm going to glue these parts in now, and then they'll be ready for when we get to the painting part. Just one thing to point out, I mean, you don't get this necessarily just with Airfix kits, but you often do with Airfix kits, but this can be a problem with all kits. If I just show you here, this is obviously one of the main wing spars, and you'll probably be able to see that it's not straight on one side, it's got bent. And that can be for numerous reasons, it's all bagged together and all the rest of it. So you just want to check that, and obviously that can be bent, and that should sort you out. And the way that we're going to do this with the wing is, with the wing spar, is you actually put the wing around it. So when you come to do that, as long as it's in the right place and it's sort of straight, then that should work out okay, like that. So that seems to be a bit better. And then this one is going to be in behind it somewhere like this, and that the wings then glue onto these from both sides. So just something to keep an eye on. And here's a quick little dry fit just before I commit to paint, and in there you can see the Bombay. There's quite a bit of detail in there to be seen, which is good. Got a nice roof there with some detailing on, and then you've got the bulkheads at the front and back and all the side detail. And I'm also going to put a bomb load in there. We've got 4 bombs as far as I can see, which seems quite light. I would have thought it would have more bombs, but what do I know? Maybe this was a light bomber. It was obviously a twin engine bomber, but bit surprised just to see 2 bombs, but maybe this is the heavy load. As I say, maybe someone can pop in the comments why there's only 4 bombs. Maybe I'm missing something. But nonetheless, you can see there how the wing spar, as I was saying before, sort of works. And we then put the top half and the bottom half of each wing to that, in that slot as well, and that should bring it all together. So here we are with the paint applied, and it's gone down very well, as you can see here. So this is the interior zinc chromate, that Mr. Colour from the interior set that they do, and that's gone down nice. It is a lacquer and it's hard as nails. It's got a sort of semi-gloss kind of feel to it. It's more of probably a satin finish, I suppose, and I'm going to be weathering straight onto this, so there's no need for a gloss coat here. It shouldn't cause any problems. Now we've got one thing to do on the bombs. We've got a tricky bit of, there's a yellow ring just here in front of the fins that needs to be replicated, and I'm going to probably try and get away with just putting a piece of this very thin tape around like that. Now I think given where this is going to be in the Bombay, and it's going to be quite hard to see, I think as a little test, that's pretty good. I think we might get away with it using that. Now this is the I've actually thrown away the packaging. It's more or less Tamiya tape, but it's not made by Tamiya. It's more precision, and it's been very thinly cut. So sorry, I don't know what this is actually called, but it's easy to find out there if you just look for very, very thin cut. It's Japanese tape. I forget the name. I got it from UMP, anyway, Ultimate Modelling Products, so they've got it in stock, so you'll see it on there, and it's very good stuff, very thin, as you can see, and yeah, I think that's gone on quite well. Now, I think an improvement can be made by, obviously this part that's grey, that's going to be attached inside, so you're going to be looking up at this, like that. So any joins, getting them on the top edge, like I've done here, exactly where it is, actually, to be honest, is your best way around that. So if you put your join like that, you're never going to see it, because once it's in the Bombay, even if it's the lower one, you're going to be looking up like that. I'm not going to gloss coat this. We've got some decals to put on there. I'm just going to buff it up once the paint's dry with I've got a 4000 grit, although there's obviously no grit on this, buffing stick, and that should polish it enough. If we just do a bit like that and put a shine on it that you can see there, it should just help with the decaling, and then that's another layer that we haven't had to put on. So a little trick, you can do that. I mean, it's not foolproof, but it does work sometimes if you're worried about a very matte finish and prefer putting decals on a glossed finish and you don't want to put a gloss coat on, then you can just use something like this just to bring the surface up to a very shiny finish, and then when you matte it all down it will produce that. So we'll get the decals on there and start with some oil weathering. So I've done a bit of detail painting now on the cockpit section and pretty much finished off all of the interior parts for blocking in the paint. So now we're ready for oil washes, and there you can see we've got the instrument panel there, which is a decal from the sheet, which is fine in this scale, and I've just kind of touched in things that I've seen in a few pictures, like the grey tips there to the control I don't know what they'd be called, yokes are they, or whatever that bit is, and I've changed out some of the levers there on the can you see that, the levers there, and I've painted one red, one black and one grey, just to kind of hint at what's there. There's meant to be sort of two of them, but it's a bit too small. Added some lap belts, which is what it seems to just be in this one. There don't seem to be any actual shoulder harnesses. Painted in the lap belts back there, added them on these seats and that one at the front there, and just put a little metal loop at the end. It's not quite right, but it gives the idea. It's all about just suggesting things, and then if you see it, you should be most people should be happy with it. So now we're ready for oil washes. I've painted in some of the instrument areas as well that are on the side of the fuselage, again just sort of hinting at dials with red and white. It's pretty rough, but it does the job. I was gonna get the Edward set for this one, and I chose not to, and actually this would be a very good candidate for it, because you can see an awful lot inside there, and that's pretty much where most of it's designed to go, in and around the cockpit, with all of these dials and everything, and when you've got the canopy on, you might be able to see, you can still see quite a lot through there. There you go, so you can see all of those. You can't really see the instrument panel, but I mean it is there, there you go. But yeah, see there's a lot of detail that's going to come through there, and at the minute we've got actually the bits that are going to be coloured are hazed out, so that is what you're going to see, what we're looking at here. So yeah, just something to bear in mind if you're going to build this kit, that might be worth just chucking a cockpit set in there, especially because this bit here is going to be clear as well. Got a clear nose section and then a clear nose end, so there's going to be a lot of light in this area as well. So yeah, that's good to see that there's a lot of detail going to be shown. So next up, I'll speed the video up and be doing some oils. So we're going to be using olive green, burnt umber and raw umber, and those three should give quite a nice mix and add some depth to all of this green and try and break it up a little bit. So these are going to be heavily thinned, and I'm going to make a wash out of them. So we've got the bombs on. We've got the bombs done, sorry, and I've just done the trick with the masking tape around the tail there, and then put the decal stencils on, and I think that's fine like that. I'll probably leave that like that, and then when it's all together, stick them up in there now, and then when it's all together, just blast some matte varnish up there, just to sort of dull those down and all the rest of it, if we can actually see it. I've painted up as much as I can of the guns here, but I'm going to do some further detail painting on them because they can be installed afterwards. Not this one, but that's already fully painted. So we'll get that together now. Okay, so I've allowed this to dry now, and I've put some weights in here, numerous things. I think there's even a screw head there for a multi-headed screwdriver. It's just the stuff I could find. I weighed it and it was about 35 grams, so I've put some in and around here. I've put some air gun pellets down the open side of this as well. I've put some there, some down in there, anywhere I could really fit it. As long as it's forward of where the engines are, because the landing gear is going to be here. So as long as we're in front of that, we want to just bring the nose down. That's the idea. So I'm confident that this is probably enough, but I'm going to put, I'm going to fill up the engine nacelles as well behind the, in front of the landing gear and behind the engine. So I'll put as much as I can in there now. I'll put as much as I can in when I get to that part. You don't actually see much in this section, so I've glued some along the back of the wall there as well. It is important, I've used super glue to fix it, but it's important to not just rely on the super glue, because that can be a bit brittle and it can come away after a period of time. So I've just laid in a load of PVA glue over it as well, which can take a shock a lot better, and should, with the two together, it shouldn't come apart. So now it's just a matter of bringing the two fuselage halves together and getting on with the next bits. I've had to remove quite a lot of material from this side on the tail section to make sure that the horizontal stabilizer there as it goes on is actually sitting square. As I put it on straight out of the box, it was sitting a little bit like, I can't actually make it do it now. It was a bit more like that. Just a bit skewed, if that makes sense. It wasn't sitting level across the back there, so you've got to remove a little bit from this side here. You can actually see, because you can see where there's been a build up in the mould. There's like a sort of mould line, which sort of shows you how much you need to take away, and just sort of kept doing it and trying to get it level by eye. Now I'm not actually going to glue it on until I've got the main wings on, but I thought I'd do this just to get somewhere in the area. And we've also got quite a large gap here where these two pieces meet, so I'm going to need to put probably a shim of plasticard in there, cut it back, and then use a bit of sprue glue just to sand all of that in. But like I said, that will all go together once the main wings are on, and they actually get attached like this. So you attach them in their two halves to the wing spars. So they go, you get one behind the wing spar and one through it like that, and then once that's glued, you then get this piece which slots in between it, in between those two spars there, and then you've got to put the undercarriage leg on and set that up with one of the nacelles holding it in place. So you just you don't glue this, you just sort of sit it there and let that undercarriage leg sit and glue in the right position, and that's going to be a sort of butt join in there like that. Now there's an awful lot of wiggle room there, so what I think I'm going to do is once it's glued in the right angle, use some brass rod and just sort of support it, drill some holes back there and support it so it can't move forward. And that's how the wing goes. And then we've actually got quite a strange dihedral, which I didn't realise, on the B25. Sort of goes up and out. So once all that's glued together, which I'll do on sped up camera, we'll get the horizontal stabiliser on, and then we're pushing on through the build then.